The Korean Peninsula, a landmass jutting out from the Asian mainland, has been a focal point of global tension for over 70 years. This conflict, which has divided the peninsula into two distinct states, North Korea and South Korea, has its roots in the aftermath of World War II. In 1945, as the Japanese Empire crumbled, Korea, which had been under Japanese rule since 1910, was divided along the 38th parallel. The Soviet Union administered the North, while the United States took control of the South. This division, intended as a temporary measure to oversee the surrender of Japanese forces, quickly solidified into a hardened political reality. The two superpowers, embroiled in the nascent Cold War, backed different political ideologies and leaders, setting the stage for the long and often bitter conflict that would follow. The Korean War, which erupted in 1950, further entrenched the division of the peninsula. Although the war ended in an armistice in 1953, a formal peace treaty was never signed, leaving the two Koreas technically still at war. The Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, a heavily fortified buffer zone stretching along the 38th parallel, became a stark symbol of this unresolved conflict and the enduring division of the Korean people. The Korean conflict is more than just a regional dispute. It represents a microcosm of the broader ideological and geopolitical struggles of the 20th century. The Cold War rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union played out on the Korean Peninsula, transforming a local conflict into a proxy war with global implications. The division of Korea has had profound consequences for the people of the peninsula. Families were torn apart, separated by an impenetrable border. The two Koreas embarked on vastly different political and economic trajectories, with North Korea adopting a rigid communist system and South Korea pursuing a capitalist model. The legacy of this division continues to shape the lives of Koreans on both sides of the border. The North Korea-South Korea conflict is a complex and evolving situation. Understanding its trajectory requires looking at pivotal moments that have shaped the relationship between these two nations. Here is a timeline of key events. In 1945, World War II ends. Korea, previously under Japanese rule, is divided along the 38th parallel. The Soviet Union administers the North and the United States administers the South. From 1950 to 1953, the Korean War breaks out. North Korea, supported by China and the Soviet Union, invades South Korea. The United States intervenes, leading a United Nations force to defend South Korea. The war ends in an armistice, but no peace treaty is signed. Between 1953 and 1991, the Cold War intensifies the division of Korea. North Korea, under Kim Il-sung's leadership, adopts a policy of self-reliance and develops its military, including its nuclear program. South Korea, supported by the United States, experiences rapid economic growth under an authoritarian but increasingly capitalist system. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapses, marking the end of the Cold War. This event had significant implications for the Korean Peninsula, as North Korea lost a crucial ally and source of economic support. In 1994, tensions escalate as North Korea refuses international inspections of its nuclear facilities. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter helps broker an agreement, the Agreed Framework, to freeze North Korea's plutonium production in exchange for aid and diplomatic engagement. In 1998, North Korea test-fires a long-range ballistic missile over Japan, raising alarm bells in the region and internationally. This event underscores the growing threat posed by North Korea's missile program. In 2000, a historic inter-Korean summit takes place between South Korean President Kim Dae-jung and North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. This summit, the first between leaders of the two Koreas, raises hopes for reconciliation and a peaceful resolution to the conflict. In 2002, North Korea admits to having a secret uranium enrichment program, violating the Agreed Framework. The United States designates North Korea as part of the axis of evil along with Iran and Iraq, further straining relations. The Korean conflict, while rooted in the division of the peninsula, has always been entangled with the interests and actions of major global powers. The roles of these players, their alliances, rivalries, and interventions, have profoundly shaped the trajectory of the conflict and continue to influence its dynamics today. The United States has been a staunch ally of South Korea since the Korean War. The U.S. maintains a significant military presence in the South and provides security guarantees. This alliance, forged in the crucible of the Cold War, remains a cornerstone of U.S. policy in East Asia. China, North Korea's most important ally, shares a border with the North, and has historically provided economic and diplomatic support. While China's influence has diminished, it remains crucial in mediating the conflict and preventing the collapse of North Korea. Once a major player in the Korean Peninsula, Russia's influence has waned since the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, it maintains ties with North Korea and has sought to reassert its role as a regional power. Japan, a key U.S. ally in the region, views North Korea's missile program and military ambitions with deep concern. Its historical tensions with both Koreas add another layer of complexity to the regional dynamics. Beyond these major players, other countries have a stake in the Korean conflict. The European Union, for example, has supported sanctions against North Korea, while also engaging in diplomatic efforts to promote dialogue. South Korea has also actively sought to build international support for its position, particularly among its economic partners. The interests and actions of these global players are often intertwined and sometimes conflicting. Understanding their motivations and relationships is crucial to navigating the complexities of the Korean conflict and finding a path toward a peaceful resolution. Section 4. Roots of Discord, Ideological Divide, and the Nuclear Threat. At the heart of the North-South Korea conflict lies a complex web of historical grievances, ideological differences, and the looming threat of nuclear war. These factors, deeply intertwined and mutually reinforcing, have fueled mistrust and animosity for decades, making the path to reconciliation a perilous and uncertain one. The ideological divide between North and South Korea is stark. North Korea, under the Kim dynasty's rule, adheres to a rigid form of communism known as Juche, which emphasizes self-reliance and isolation. Its political system is highly centralized and authoritarian, with limited freedoms for its citizens. South Korea, in contrast, has embraced democracy and capitalism, becoming a vibrant economic powerhouse and a model of technological innovation. This ideological chasm, exacerbated by the legacy of the Korean War and decades of propaganda, makes dialogue and compromise extremely difficult. Each side views the other's system as an existential threat, fueling suspicion and hindering efforts to find common ground. Compounding this ideological divide is North Korea's relentless pursuit of nuclear weapons. Driven by a siege mentality and a desire for regime survival, North Korea sees nuclear capability as the ultimate deterrent against external threats, particularly from the United States. Its nuclear tests and ballistic missile launches have drawn international condemnation and triggered sanctions. The threat of nuclear war on the Korean Peninsula is a constant source of anxiety for the region and the world, with potentially catastrophic consequences. The nuclear issue lies at the heart of the conflict, making its resolution a top priority for the international community. Addressing North Korea's security concerns while ensuring the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula remains a daunting challenge. Section 5. The Shadow of the Cold War: How Global Politics Fueled the Conflict. The Korean War, a brutal conflict that claimed millions of lives, was more than just a battle for territory on a divided peninsula. It became a proxy war, a microcosm of the broader ideological struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union that defined the Cold War era. This global rivalry cast a long shadow over the Korean Peninsula, turning a local conflict into an international crisis. The United States, fearing the spread of communism in Asia, intervened decisively in the Korean War, leading a United Nations force to defend South Korea. The Soviet Union, in turn, provided military aid and support to North Korea, solidifying the division of the peninsula and entrenching the two Koreas as Cold War battlegrounds. The Cold War had a profound impact on the Korean conflict, shaping its dynamics and hindering efforts at peaceful resolution. The two Koreas became pawns in a larger geopolitical chess game, their internal affairs intertwined with the superpower rivalry. The constant threat of escalation, fueled by mistrust and ideological animosity, loomed over the peninsula. The Cold War also militarized the Korean Peninsula. The two Koreas, backed by their respective allies, built up massive armies and arsenals, turning the DMZ into one of the most heavily fortified borders in the world. This militarization, a legacy of the Cold War, continues to pose a significant obstacle to peace and stability. While the Cold War officially ended in 1991, its legacy continues to haunt the Korean Peninsula. The unresolved issues, deep-seated mistrust, and the nuclear threat are all reminders of the Cold War's enduring impact. Overcoming this legacy is crucial to achieving lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula.